Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video I want to talk about NPC crews and AI blades and how they challenge the idea of multi-crew gameplay. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. Star Citizen has a lot of ships that require more than one person to operate. Now you will be able to fly most of those on your own, but by doing so you might be making it more difficult to use all the functions of the ships or use the turrets for defense, leaving you very vulnerable. And this is actually okay for when you just need to move the ship between two locations to be used later. But when you actually want to use it, you might have to find the crew. Star Citizen is a very group-focused game, with many higher complexity activities requiring multiple players. Fortunately, we have a system of forming parties and organizations that allow players to group up for these activities. Now, what if you don't want to group up with people for whatever reason? Maybe your friends are not available and you don't want to play with randoms, or maybe you're doing something low risk and boring but still want to have a few turrets manned. And from the looks of it, the current direction of combat balance is to make turrets more deadly, so it might actually be worth it to have your turrets manned at all times. CAG are planning to offer a potential solution to this, two solutions actually, AI blades and NPC crews, and we will get to what those are and what they do in a minute. But first, some players have a hypothesis that they can operate their ships using only AI blades and NPC crews at the same capacity and efficiency as with player crews. And that leads us to the potential problem of efficiency versus availability of player crews over blades or NPCs. So let's start with AI blades. AI blades are proposed as a module you can install into your ship's computer to automate certain functions of the ship. Now, it was mostly talked about in the context of making turrets work without gunners, but I think it could be expanded to automate other functions of the ships as well. I could definitely see some ships using AI blades to control drones or possibly even to manage refining. But the general concept is that your ship has a limited capacity for these modules and they have a singular purpose. On the other hand, NPC crews are pretty much exactly what the name implies. You hire a physical NPC to reside on your ship and fill some functions. We don't have much information on NPC crews besides the promise that they will eventually be a thing. But I think that the general idea is that you can have as many NPC crew members as you have crew slots on your ship. They can also fulfill more than one task, so I suppose you could have a turret gunner that can also help with cargo loading or damage control. So NPC crew members are more versatile than AI blades, but you have to pay them a salary instead of having a fixed one-time cost like the AI blade would have. So are these the fix-all replacement of player crews that some players are hoping for? Well, probably not. There are a few things suggesting that it might not be the case. First of all, CAG are trying to encourage playing as a group, and I definitely see them making NPCs and AI blades less effective to promote player grouping. But that aside, AI performance in Star Citizen is a bit inconsistent, generally depending on the patch, server performance, and how the servers wake up that morning. But that applies to the general AI and the combat AI, but there's one very important difference there. The NPC pilots you fight during events and bounties kinda have to do everything. They have to shoot and maneuver and generally manage their ship's state. An NPC gunner or an AI blade controlling a turret on a player's ship only has one job: shoot at the enemy. So technically they could perform better than general combat AI. Now I know what you're going to say. Gunners on NPC ships don't perform that well either. And you're right, but I would argue that this has improved with 3.23. Also, NPCs have different skill levels which determine how well they fight. So technically it could be possible to hire a higher skill NPC gunner who will be very accurate. At the same time, we have to remember that any inaccuracy in NPC turrets that we see is mostly artificial. With a little bit of math, you can find an accurate firing solution pretty much all of the time. So any miss you see in game is hard-coded in for balance. This especially applies to NPC crew gunners. On the other hand, it would make sense that AI blades should suffer from this a lot less, as they can react to the environment faster. leading to a less prominent artificial inaccuracy. And this should be reflected in the increased purchase cost. So if NPC crews and AI blades are not as effective as player crews, what is their place in the verse? I think the answer lies in a larger debate. Most players in Star Citizen for the most part want to be flying their own ship, because that's what the game is about. But at the same time, many players own more than one ship, and many of those ships require more than one crew member to operate. This creates a divide between how many crew slots need to be filled and how many crew members are available and willing. At the same time, the willingness of someone to fill a crew position depends on the planned activity and what they will be doing. Also, this doesn't mean that there aren't any players who only want to be a crew member on a larger ship, but the number of these players is very small. But for a moment, let's focus why people don't want to be crew and why captains don't want to hire crew. Right now, being a crew member on a ship most likely means you're going to man a turret the whole time, which is a pretty monotonous activity. Mole crews have it a bit easier as their turrets are needed for the primary function of the ship. The same applies to gunners on combat ships. If you're taking a combat ship out with a full crew, it's most likely to engage in combat. So again, the gunners are necessary for the primary function of the ship. This changes when you start talking about crew and gunners on cargo ships. Technically, they are not necessary for the ship to fulfill its role, except in rare cases where it's attacked. So we actually come back to the fact that crew engagement depends on the planned activity. Fortunately for everyone, but especially cargo haulers, things are about to get more interesting in the near future. With cargo elevators and physicalized cargo, it's actually pretty useful to find some crew to help with the loading and unloading and to man the turrets in between, which is more engaging for the crew than to just sit in a turret and do nothing. And a little bit more in the future, engineering, damage control and maintenance will give crews even more things to do outside of combat. But that brings us to the other side of the debate. Some ship captains are unwilling to hire crews for a few reasons. Of course, those who have an organization to call upon will likely draw crew from there. Those who don't have very limited options, at least initially, because they have to hire random players that happen to be on the same server and are willing. Of course, given time, an enterprising captain can build a community of trusted crew members they can call when needed. But most captains are reluctant to hire random players to crew or provide escort ships. The main reason for this is lack of trust. You never know who you're letting on your ship, and you have no guarantee they won't betray you or run away at the first sign of trouble. And that is a bit more difficult to solve, and the solution is unlikely to come fully from the game itself. On one hand, once online, the reputation system could provide some hints as to who can be trusted. But that wouldn't stop people from using clean accounts as informants and moles for outlaw groups. The less obvious solution would require the captains to ask potential crew members to buy into the activity to cover fuel, repair, or cargo costs with the promise of being paid their share when complete. This, on one hand, gives the crew an incentive to stay with the mission until the end, but on the other hand, opens them up to their money being stolen by the potential captain. So clearly, no clear-cut solution can be offered. Though I guess that ties into the risk-reward balance that Star Citizen is all about. And that brings us back to AI blades and NPC crews. I think most people are going to use them for situations where combat is not very likely to man turrets and other weapons, and then rely on player crew to help with cargo, engineering, and escort duties. At the same time, combat missions will likely remain fully within the realm of player crews, unless CIG decide to allow players to buy AI blades that outperform the average player. It will also be interesting to see how reputation impacts this problem. But at the same time, I think we are years away from any kind of NPC crew or AI blade technology getting into the verse. And with that being said, that's all for today. What do you think? Is there a divide between how many crew members we need and how many players are willing to be a crew member? Are NPC crews going to bridge this divide? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.